everybody. Welcome to Sonic Talk number 349. Looks like it should have some sort of importance, that number. I expect it's something that can't be devised by some other number. But anyway, if Mark was here, I'm sure he'd be able to tell us. But he's not here, and we have this week a gang. We haven't had them together for a little while, so I'm going to go to first to Gaz Williams there, because look, he's looking kind of like very rock and roll with his bass up in the air. If there was a monitor below waist height, I'm sure he'd have his feet on it as well. There he goes. Easy. I saw you doing some operatic singing the other day, which was very different to the image you're portraying at this very moment. Anyway, Gaz Williams, music technologist, bass player, and owner of Sonus Wahoo. Oh no, Volume. No. Oh, the Volume. Very nice. Yeah.
Yeah. I've been sent this. I've been endorsed by Sonus now, which is fantastic because as some of you might know, I'm such a huge fan of the Wahoo, the one before this, but. This is pretty cool from a synthy sort of point of view because it's a volume pedal, but it gives you like kind of much more like synthesizer type of macro editing of it. But you can do one thing that's incredibly cool, trigger like a regular volume pedal, but instead of having the motion actually be in the volume, just the motion just triggers a preset fade and then the preset fade out again. So like you could do wicked like violin type stuff because like each time you've actually set what the fade is. So actually
like a very editable vibrato stroke, not a vibrato, tremolo type thing. Yeah, auto pan, all that kind of stuff. Yeah,
but it's also got LFO in there, but it's actually got a dual LFO that can sort of so it's an analog again, like the Wahoo. It's an all analog signal path, but you've got all this kind of fancy digital control over it, and it's got like. But now what they've done on this, which is better than the Wahoo, is that they've actually, apart from the USB, you've actually got DIN plugs now for your MIDI. So
so you could use it like a MIDI foot volume as well.
Yeah, it does. It just functions, and also over the USB, it functions as just a class compliant expression pedal as well. So
excellent. Well, Gaz, thank you very much. I'm sure Sonus will be delighted at your first gig as the endorsee. Just straight in there with the good work. No, but it's totally relevant and
so
fun.
Into it. I'm so into it. That's the thing. I'm so passionate about the Wahoo. I was just really into it. So sorry.
No, it's absolutely fine. No, they are. We did if you want to check out, Gaz did a review for us of the Wahoo, and I'm guessing the mechanics are going to be quite similar, but in the amplitude domain there. But do check it out. So yes, Gaz Williams there in Bristol, in recent Sonus endorsee. If anybody else wants to endorse any of our panelists for anything, then you can contact them via their various website properties. I'm sure they'd be happy to discuss it. I can't speak for them, but Anyway, we haven't had Rich Hilton in for a little while. Rich is there. The sun seems to be streaming through the window, or is it bouncing off the 10 feet of snow and icicles?
It's bouncing, and it's actually lightly snowing at the moment.
Ah, how quaint. Rich Hilton, of course, keyboard player with Chic out on the road a lot of the time, also in the studio with Mr. Nile Rodgers. Obviously not right now. He's at home, snowed in. I'm guessing you can still make it work. You can still make it to work, right?
Oh, yes.
Excellent.
Yeah, there will be work today.
Ah, okay. So as we like to guess, there's a limousine or perhaps a snowplow of some kind of extremely complex device to make sure that Rich can get to work and wax hot ones all day.
Well, a Prius is a pretty complex device, and it's in my garage waiting for my humble foot to apply to its accelerator pedal.
Ah, well, I hope you have a good day at work. Anyway, thank you very much, Rich, for coming in. And we'll also go to... no, we won't. We will there. Robbie Williams, who's in Robot Studio. Robbie, of course. Robbie Williams. What the hell am I thinking? I think it was...
If only I had money.
Yeah, it was just a Freudian slip. I've heard that Robbie Williams is also a very keen synthesizer collector and also likes to light his studio.
Nice try, Nick.
Robbie Bronnimann. I don't know where that came from, Robbie, but, it's got to be a good thing. Robbie Bronnimann, of course, they're at Robot Studios, where he mans the controls, making compositions, productions, film composition. He's also got this fabulous project Sushi Friday, or is it Friday Sushi or Sushi Friday?
Sushi Friday, yeah.
Sushi Friday, which is all sort of real-time live played electronica. How's that going?
Yeah, it's going very well. We did 3 days last week, and we've nearly finished our first track. So there's a few more video sort of blogs online at Sushi Friday Music. Yeah, so it's cool.
Excellent.
But I've been a bit excited this week because I've gone all nostalgic, and I bought from eBay my first ever keyboard, an MT68. After talking about it a few weeks ago, so I've been enjoying putting that actually into a couple of new tracks this week.
Does that go? Is that the one that goes do, 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 with the sort of metallic hi-hat rhythms and what have you, and the magic piano? Has it got the fantasy tone?
Yeah, it's got a fantasy tone, and it's got these little modulation buttons and a weird sort of sustained reverb thing. It's great.
And even better, it takes batteries.
It takes batteries, yeah.
I
bought it from Dixon's in 1985, and I managed to get it from eBay for 20 quid.
I can just see you at the back of the Howard Jones tour bus, entertaining and writing songs on the fly on your Casio.
Yeah, auto accompaniment and speakers. I've gone against everything I believe in.
Yes, in fact, what's going on there? You did say that speakers do not belong on any keyboards. So now we see, the hard line is gradually beginning to.
Yeah, exactly. The OP1 and the MT68. So they're my only concessions to speakers.
Right. Well, we'll see. We'll see.
The speaker died on my OP1. It just stopped working. I obviously feel like mourning it now. It feels so sad. I'm so upset about it.
Oh no, and I'm guessing you can't really open it up, can you? I mean, if you send it back to HQ, you could have a teenager look at it for you, I suppose.
Teenagers.
As if. Anyway, I haven't said hello to Dave Spiers. Dave Spiers there, sitting there, looking like the don of synthesizers, right there with his.
He is.
OB8 voice behind him.
Bose headphones. If Bose are watching and they'd like to endorse me, I fully recommend Bose headphones and earbuds.
Yeah, me too. I've still got these skull candy ones that I found outside my house.
Oh, so I think you'll find Bose are better.
I think I probably would find Bose were better if I could actually afford them. Anyway, good Dave Spiers, of course. G4 Software, makers of fine software instruments and many things. Any releases this week? Any more sound packs or anything of the kind? No. Okay then. So you were saying that you'd been ensconced in a studio for 24 hours. Is there anything you can talk about?
No.
All right then. Right, I'm moving on. So always good to have Dave on. Likes to keep his cards close to his chest. Leaves it to me to reveal all the secrets. Right. Anyway, thank you very much for joining us. I was wondering whether or not we've got a couple of topics here. The one that just sort of came in, which has been rather I don't know if it's been much of a shock, but we should probably talk about it just purely because it is big news. But just before I say thank you to Isotope for sponsoring the show, of course, because they are our sponsors, and you will be hearing a message from them later. Stay tuned. Right, this is big news. This is NASDAQ and AVID. And NASDAQ is not one of those words that you usually hear in terms of music technology companies, but obviously NASDAQ have delisted Pro Tools. I mean, I think the news we spoke about this some time ago that they were going to be, and I guess the deadline has expired and this has happened. And Peter Kern's written an article. I'd like to point out that all of these things went out after I tweeted that it is, which is after Dave sent me the link to the story. But yeah, very interesting article. But what's more interesting about this is lots and lots of people are sort of commenting in the comments, because as we've said before, things like this, the market is often all about confidence, and with Pro Tools being such a stalwart in, not only in the music business but in the film industry. I mean, there are other options, obviously, and but is it something to worry about? I mean, Rich, you are a regular Pro Tools user. Does this sort of thing bother you? I mean, we have talked about this sort of in the past, but would you be thinking, time for a plan B, at least on the horizon, or are you not too bothered about this news?
Well, there's two answers to that question. One is I'm not worried because Pro Tools will survive before AVID and will survive after AVID if that is what's going to happen to it. But as for the plan B, always. Every day of the week, every month of the year, always looking at plan Bs.
I'm guessing Pro Tools doesn't buy you many Valentines. I mean, imagine you have to sit in front of it every day, and the whole time you're thinking about somebody else, potential, and it's a potential as well.
Well, I've always got like a line of DAWs in my menu bar. I mean, it's just I've got a bunch of them to choose from. I work there almost all the time, but I could work in any of them if I had to.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, do you think? I mean, obviously, this is going to be a massively speculative conversation because we don't really know what's going to happen. But I mean, assuming any company that's in sort of financial straits, and there are sort of some fairly scary statistics going on here in terms of operating capital and loss. You could find all those sort of things online at those kind of financial websites where they report this sort of thing. They're going to have to jettison something fairly major. I mean, people have been talking about maybe selling on Sibelius, but I would think that would be something like a drop in the ocean. It's going to have to be one of the bigger properties, isn't it, if they're going to raise any cash? What do you think, Robbie?
Well, I mean, I'm not one who speaks from much experience with Pro Tools. I used it in the early days when Howard had a system. I don't know what it was, a Mix 24 Plus system or something. And he kind of jumped ship, and I've never really had much experience with it. So I kind of feel a little bit of an outsider, but I've got a lot of friends who've had it and still use it or move to other things. And I think they probably spread themselves too thin with all these extra companies, and they should have just really concentrated on servicing the core market of Pro Tools, which to me looks like, and the Sibelius thing, which look like the two main things which they really should be putting their efforts into.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the difficulty is you can't really sell Pro Tools on its own because it's all tied in with all their live venue stuff and all that whole live sound things as well, which is not necessarily someone who'd be interested in one of those might not be interested in the others. It's a tricky one. Dave, you had experience of being underneath the sort of AVID umbrella for a short while. Try and keep your vitriol to a minimum, I'm sure. But I mean, what do you think? What are their options?
I don't know. I think I made my feelings pretty clear in a previous podcast to do with the CEO at that time, who seemed to have. I mean, there is this fantastic anecdote, isn't it? How do you make £1 million in the music industry? Answer: start with at least 2. And I think they seem to have done a reasonably good job of that. And I think Robbie's right. They should have just focused on the core things. I mean, obviously, when they brought DigiDesign into the fold, then Pro Tools. AVID as a non-linear editing system was one of the kind of first and industry standards in the whole video industry. And that got knocked by Final Cut Pro and such like. I think, for me, it's a very uneasy relationship when you look at music and stock market. And when you start looking at kind of, Harvard graduates, the kind of business school graduates running music companies, I think therein probably lies a lot of the problem. So, yeah, I mean, for me, the ultimate solution would be for, say, somebody like Focusrite to acquire all the Digi stuff. For me, that would work really well.
Actually, that's not a bad idea, because they now cover live stuff as well. I don't know. What do you think, Rich?
Oh, the irony to think of Focusrite acquiring Pro Tools, 25 years after Pro Tools distributed Focusrite, or whoever DigiDesign. It was a whole union at one point.
Yeah. Well, what goes around comes around, in many ways, I suppose. I don't know. Gaz, are you? I mean, I get you. I know you're not a Pro Tools user so much. But it's interesting. It's more, like I say, it's more kind of what happens to something like this and how does it get... Because, I mean, obviously, Pro Tools has got a life of its own. It's never going to go away. I mean, the users just would not allow it, just because there's too many of them, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I think this is an issue about the parent company rather than Pro Tools, though, isn't it? And sort of AVID's business practices, etc. And I think that, in a way, mixing it up is possibly... I believe, as Rich says, I think whatever would happen, Pro Tools is too valuable an asset for it just to vanish, and someone would buy it and it would continue. But I think the interesting thing that reading the Create Digital Music, the CDM blog about it, and the comments, lots of interesting comments.
Guy Sigsworth,
yeah, he was very vocal on that, wasn't he? So that was quite interesting. But it did make me think that, in a way, Pro Tools spans this kind of period of time where the amount of people who've come into making music with technology has just grown, possibly, I don't know, exponentially, or certainly as computers, everything. When Pro Tools was first out, the amount of people who were kind of maybe in that world was quite few, and now is just gigantic. So so in the early days that they'd cornered the market, something that the comments are going on a lot about is that Pro Tools is an older generation, for the older generation of people, people who've been using it for a long time, and that a lot of newer, younger producers don't have any sort of attachment to it.
Yeah, it's a different. It's true. It's a different process, though. I mean, this is one thing that I was thinking about before the show as well. A little bit was the fact that it was one of the first standalone DAWs that worked in a computer environment that you could rely on if you had a 108-piece orchestra in a room and they needed to be recorded. Pro Tools would more than likely do it as compared to the rest of the stuff. Obviously everything has problems. IT is always an issue with any complex setup, but it was one of the most robust systems from the start, and it was the earliest and the best sound quality for the time available. Because before, outside of Pro Tools, it's easy to forget that there was just so much like cobbled together, not quite working properly. Yeah, it's all right as long as you do it in this order kind of nonsense that we all had to deal with. And I think that counts for a lot, because I mean, essentially, it's like all of these things that happen. It's if you work with a touring band, and one of the guys in the crew also works with Coldplay or Gabriel or one of these other people, they say, "Oh yeah, we use this," and you go, "Oh, we'll try that then," and then very quickly it becomes the norm, just because everybody goes, "I know I can trust it; it just works." And that's something that I think is forgotten a little bit about. Maybe not what AVID have done, but certainly what DigiDesign did. And they can to a great degree rely on that reliability factor, and that's the thing that's kind of crept up underneath them, hasn't it? That the fact that other stuff works too. I know, Robbie, you use Motu stuff and you use live, but I mean, presumably you wouldn't use that to multi-track record the show.
No, right? I mean, I've got an Apogee Symphony IO in the studio just purely because it was the only thing that had the wealth of ASEBU and analog ins that I needed for like my speaker system and my System 6000 and stuff. But I've actually just got a Universal Audio Apollo this week, purely to use as channel strips, because with the flex out thing, I can basically run all my mics into it, and in real time through the console track, anything through all the UAD plugins that I've got anyway.
Nice move.
Yeah, I mean, it's brilliant. But I mean, what I can't understand about the whole Pro Tools thing is I always think the hardware always just seems to be, the whole premise of it always seems to be behind the kind of curve. I mean, when they brought out that last system that was all PCI cards, I mean, the writing was already on the wall for that, for PCI cards. And like I think Guy Sigsworth said in the chat room, who wants to spend all this money on a Pro Tools, HDX system, whatever, and then have this noisy, box in the room that has to have all fans in it and stuff to run all the cards. It just seems like they should have been putting their efforts into like getting robust Thunderbolt solutions ready and all that kind of thing.
Well, that perhaps that might tie in with another subject that we got. Rich, I mean, you've had to deal with all of this hardware, upgrade path, and I know, as with any platform, it can be incredibly frustrating. It's like, and when do you jump? When do you, when you do that? But I mean, you could just stop where you are. I mean, it wouldn't just because they, if it pauses development for a little while, assuming that even is going to happen, it's not necessarily going to be a problem for you, right?
Well, define problem. I'm really glad that I'm running Pro Tools 11 right now, for example.
Right.
Could I have planted a flag in Pro Tools 9? Absolutely. Could I have planted a flag in OS Snow Leopard? Absolutely. A lot of people do. I just don't. And I'm really happy right now for the advantages. The particular work I'm doing right now is really well supported by the features in Pro Tools 11 that weren't in the previous versions. That said, those features were quite often in other people's software long ago, and I freely, agree to that. And there's one other aspect of this discussion I wanted to address quickly, and that's the cultural, social aspect of it. And that is that the way people make music has changed. And Pro Tools is developed around a fairly old-fashioned paradigm of you're running a virtual tape machine. And there's MIDI, and you can edit the audio up the wazoo, and there's time stretching and all that stuff kind of thing. But it's built around a paradigm of music creation that is not necessarily as large a piece of the creative market as it once was. And so now you got guys who never touched the Pro Tools system, who learned in Cubase or learned in Ableton or learned in, wherever, Digital Performer. And that's what creation means to them. And they get wonderful results there because all of these things work pretty well.
Yeah, that's very true. I mean, but again, as we've talked before, I mean, you use Live, but you wouldn't be able to use it for a multi-track recording. You still need something to be able to do that, right? So
sure, I could if I had to, or wanted to. Absolutely, I could.
Right. Okay.
I don't think
and
the
Studio
issues with
One
Pro Tools-
and.
Sorry. Yeah. No, I think you're right. I agree. I think I was just more interested in exploring the kind of concept of what happens when you have to think about, what else you might work on. Sorry, I've just hit the intro button again. I managed to stop it in time. I obviously need some sort of equivalent. I need one of those kind of control surfaces for Pro Tools for here, with lots of lights on. That's what I'd really like, rather than my very functional but working nano control that does it.
Just so you can use trackpad only.
Trackpad only, yeah, there's a concept.
Isn't that what trackball? That's what loads of people who have those big icons, they only end up ever using the Kensington track middle of it. That's what I know. At least a couple of people who do that.
That is a pricey trackpad. Speaking of, not speaking of anything, I'd just like to say we've got a absolutely bumper crop in the chat room today. 110 people, which is good for a Wednesday afternoon. So, well, if you're ever interested in joining us again, I suppose you probably know this if you're watching, but if you're listening audio only, sonicstate.com/live is probably the thing to do. This feels like we shall see. I mean, I'm guessing that as something like AVID is driven by shares and shareholders and financial concerns, some action will have to be presumably taken, or will have to be seen to be taken quite rapidly to change up the situation. And I think, as Peter Kern said in his article on Create Digital Music, one thing is certain, that something is likely to happen fairly extremely from a business point of view, just because that's the way these things tend to go. And it'll be interesting to see what actually happens. Sonic 837 in the 9837 says, yeah, everybody's on the dole. That's why it's so busy, which is the dole being unemployment if you're outside of the UK. I think it's probably time for our ad. I want to say thank you very much to Isotope for their sponsors of the show. You will be aware, hopefully, of Beat Tweaker, which is some Break Tweaker, sorry, that came out at NAMM. It's a collaboration between Isotope and BT. BT did work on a previous plugin with them as well, and this is essentially allows you to do a whole bunch of things in the beat domain. You can manipulate audio at the molecular level. You can reinvent any beat, controlling pitch, rhythm, texture on the finest resolution on the market. Free yourself from traditional drum grids. You can create polyphonic, polytonal, all sorts of stuff. I'm just turning up the music. It's gone a bit quiet. There we are. Experiment with stunning content. You've got lots of content. Explore presets, drum samples, wavetables designed by today's top musicians and DJs, including BT. Create the perfect drum sound. You can blend some samples and robust synthesis features to generate hybrid sounds, and take control of your beats with Isotope Break Tweaker. In fact, you can get it from Break Tweaker, isotope.com/Break Tweaker for your 10-day trial, which is what they do for a lot of their software. So please do check it out, and we want to thank them very much for their sponsorship of the show. Thanks very much. Right, next topic. I guess because I sort of threw that one in there a little bit, so I'm guessing we can chop it up a little bit. We've got a couple of things here. We got obviously mobile technology is in the focus at the moment. What with the Mobile World Conference, and is anybody care to talk about this? It has ramifications. I'm not seeing any nodding of heads. Okay, the other one is the Zoe Keating cellist. No, okay, so I've not done very well on the topics this week.
You squirm.
Yeah, okay, well, I'll tell you what, I'm going to go with Mobile World Conference, just because I can. This is in Barcelona, the home of Gaudi. There is the Mobile World Conference, which is where all the great and the good of the mobile world, phones, tablets, all of that kind of stuff get together every year. And it's got to be really massive. In fact, this year,
Mark Zuckerberg
did the keynote speech, Mark Zuckerberg. They've just actually acquired WhatsApp, which is they basically bought, with the acquisition of WhatsApp, 1 billion users and got their mobile phone numbers, which is a flipping terrifying concept, because that means, well, for a start, they're going to start doing that direct text marketing to all of them. But the other thing was really, this is the kind of technology that is driving so much of what's happening in certainly in mobile computing, in and influencing the music technology that we use at the other end. I mean, the new Galaxy S5 is a quad-core 2.5 gigahertz machine, right? In a in something like this big. I mean, that is just mind-blowing. My Mac Pro over there has got 8 cores, but they're only 2.4 gigs. So it's kind of, we're ending up with this technology just moving down and down and down the food chain so fast. Gaz, you're a big, you're a co-host of Sonic Touch. I must admit, I was looking desperately for some stories that would reflect hugely on and have impact on what we're doing, and it just doesn't seem to be the case maybe this year, apart from this huge amount of CPU power just coming into things. What do you think?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's certainly interesting, isn't it, to see things develop at the pace that they're doing. I am really interested in the idea of very powerful mobile computers. So the fact that the mass market is doing that, isn't it? I mean, these things just are, these phones are just to everybody, aren't they? So in terms of the market, it's the biggest market there is. So if there could be a knock on, I think that's cool. But as we've seen with Sonic Touch, though, it's finding cohesive ways to utilize this technology in ways that's kind of that there's great workflow involved, and all the things that I've seen on any, not just on iOS, on any platform, some of the apps themselves are wonderful, but just to utilize all this power in a way that we're used to with a computer. Maybe the closest thing that we've seen now is audio bus type of thing on the iOS platform. But that's what I wonder, though. I mean, obviously, that is not of that much interest to the mobile world, because I guess the music side of it is relatively small.
Well, I'm not sure about that. I mean, because if you think about what music development and music consumption and what have you did for the Apple mobile, I mean, that's what drove the entire... it drove the entire thing, really, because of these neat apps that were being developed for it, are the things that were mostly on the music side. And they were the things that got all the publicity and that you could hook up with trendy artists and what have you. So, I mean, there is a big connect. I think, obviously, we're talking about consumption more than anything else at the moment. I know, Robbie, you're an iPhone user, aren't you? So, I mean, do you follow this stuff? I mean, because your iPhone's looking very tight. When you look at the size of my Galaxy S5, and I'm seeing all these iPhones still about, and I think, God, they look so small now. Don't you feel? Are you getting envy?
No, I mean, I've got no desire to do like music things on my phone, because I've bought various apps in the past for it, and I just find it all a real pain in the arse. It's so fiddly, and it's like Gaz said. I mean, I like doing stuff on the iPad, but even with the iPad, I tend to use it like, I'll go to like one app, like Waldorf Nave or whatever, and I'll hook it up through the iConnect MIDI 2 Plus, and I'll get it into Logic, I'll do something, I'll commit it, and I'll move on. I'm not really interested in trying to build a whole studio ecosystem in a tiny little screen like this. I've got much better things to be doing with my time. That's what I feel like, anyway. But I mean, so I actually use the phone, and I haven't got loads of apps on my phone. I like to just use it as a phone, as a camera, just all the usual things, really. I just find it's just the whole form factor of it. Unless you're going to have like a giant phone the size of an iPad, and I mean, I haven't got pockets that big, literally.
Fair enough. Rich, you've been kind of, because you got into the iPad world, and are still pretty interested in the whole app side of things. I mean, is it still very much the Apple sort of microcosm, or are you seeing anything on the other devices you're thinking, actually, maybe I should try one of these instead?
I'm thinking of both. How's that for an elusive answer?
That's pretty good.
I am thinking about getting a small tablet and something that's lighter than obviously the original iPad that I've got sitting over here, and not quite that big. But I can completely relate to what Robbie's saying about using these things as music making machines. My interest is less than, say, my wonderful friend Gaz's. But on the other hand, I'm quite often happy to have, at the very least, GarageBand, because I often need a pitch reference or want to do something very, very quickly to figure something out on a little tiny keyboard. But other than that, I don't tend to use it, or, just pull up Animog and play around for a minute. I don't tend to use it for music apps very much, as much as I carry like way too many of them on here. But I use it like he does as a phone.
It's interesting, isn't it? And that, but you know, yet that these phones are now becoming immensely powerful. I mean, you know, as a software developer, Dave, I mean, you must see, you know, it's like a quad-core 2.5 gigahertz chip in a phone, right? I mean, you could do some pretty serious business with that sort of thing if you were going to port any of your code into it, couldn't you? But what would you bother? Is there any point?
I don't know. I've got very mixed feelings about all of this. There are parts. I completely agree from a user's perspective. I totally agree with what Robbie said and Rich said. Sometimes I use phone apps as a sketch pad for something, but I noticed that I've never created anything of any use via my phone because it's all small. It's just I'm kind of noodling around and mucking about, whereas say 60% of what I create on my desktop or even a laptop will get used in some capacity. So this is kind of interesting from that angle. Also, I've been in the company lately of two sets of people, again, completely diametrically opposed. I've been working with a couple of people who will only use a phone as a phone and don't even want text messages because they don't want to be bothered while they're working, as it were. And there is a rule: you switch your phone off, you leave it in the thing at the door, and that's it. We go to work while we're in here, and I really like that. It's quite refreshing. And then on the other hand, I've also been in situations where people have been pitching mobile apps at us or me or looking for investment or something like that. And I have to say, the minute anybody makes any reference at all to being the next Mark Zuckerberg, I just switch off. So I'm completely, you know, I'm kind of over here on this and over here on that. So, yeah, I don't know is the honest answer. I'm conflicted, I think is the word.
Interesting. It looks like in the chat room there's quite a lot of plus ones and likes for guitar tuners in a phone. That seems to be the number one utility that we're going to be using it for, which I'm guessing you probably don't need a quad-core 2.5 gigahertz machine to run that. That's probably enough, isn't it? Just...
I mean, what is good though? I mean, with a phone, is just using it as a component of a bigger system, isn't it? You know, as a means to collect information. So actually, something like sticking, I found that sticking like this Apogee mic into the iPhone gets surprisingly excellent results, much better than my field recorders. So you know. So as a sort of just a component, these things are fantastic, you know. But I think it's interesting what everybody's saying. I really kind of agree with it as well. But I'm still really intrigued by the idea of just like a system that's so powerful that it just simply negates the need for anything else. You know, it's just.
But it's funny you say that because it's like we want it to be like that. We want it to. We want our, but in actuality, they are probably not very well suited for the complicated GUI interactions that we need when we're talking about music production or some of the other things, unless we get to the stage where, I mean, the one thing that I find with, I've got this Galaxy Note 2, which I think it's great. I love it. And one thing that's really good at is if you talk to it, it's incredibly good at interpreting, you know, my voice into what I'm actually wanting it to say. So if I'm driving along and need to send a text, I could just kind of go blah, 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 blah. And most of the time it gets it absolutely right, which is surprising. And you know, those are the sort of things that I suppose are where it's going to blur the background. We don't need so much GUI stuff.
Can I just make one point?
Yeah.
I had a chat with Gaz recently, and he was telling me about, you know, his whole thing about when you're in a studio and somebody's got the power of the mouse and whatever, and they're in front of the screen and you don't quite know what's going on. You imagine the scenario where everyone, you know, you're doing your whole studio on a phone. Like nobody else is going to get a look in at all. It's just like your own private little, really kind of exclusive world where there's no interaction. The smaller it gets, the less inclusive it is for other people involved in the whole process.
Yeah, that's a very good point as well. I mean, it does make it a very personal thing, I suppose. Okay, well, let's see what else we're going to look at. What time have we got? 4:45. I was kind of interested about the Mac Pro as well. I know we've talked a little bit Apple-centric, but I mean, it's out there and in the wild. I've actually got a video of someone unboxing one, which I was going to play. And I know that you've got something you want to mention about this, Robbie. So I think we'll do it because obviously these are now showing up. This is a guy called Marquez Brown who has got the Mac Pro in the building, as it were.
You can remove it using basically the top of it as a handle. And yes, it is as heavy as everyone says. If you watch other unboxings of it,
what's interesting about this unboxing, we get on and we got to see more of the insides of it, which do look pretty interesting, and the fact that it's actually got an upgradable CPU. I'm not sure what I'm doing. I can't see my mouse. There we go. So
I'm sure some of you haven't gotten.
Hold on, stop that. Hold on. It's one of the problems I've got. My camera that I'm looking into is right over the playback area of the video. So every time I try and... Anyway, that's a minor ergonomic point. Robbie, have you got one yet? Are you going to get one?
No, I'm not going to get one yet because I bought the original Mac Pro when it came out. I bought an 8-core machine, whenever it was, like 7 years ago. And that machine was like the best bit of music investment I ever paid for because it was like $2,500 when I got it, and it lasted me 6 years of making albums. It was like, and I sold it for like 700 quid. So, you know, that was an amazing, you know, return for my investment. But I needed a new machine about a year or so ago, and I knew kind of what the rumors were going to be about the new Mac, and that it was likely to be a machine without any, you know, expansion. You're going to have to use Thunderbolt and stuff. So I just took the pragmatic decision of buying another Mac Pro at the time because I've got three Apple's 24-inch cinema displays in here and stuff, and I just thought, I know that when Apple finally do this, it's going to mean not just buying a machine, it's going to mean a whole rethink of how I distribute stuff to monitors, how I'm going to get stuff to with hard drives, storage, you know, my Apogee Symphony system, all that kind of thing. So I just thought, all I need at this time is some more raw power. So I'm buying this machine, and it'll probably last me another 3 or 4 years, by which stage, when Apple do bring out a new machine, perhaps the whole kind of shock for everybody of having to move across the Thunderbolt will kind of have kind of died down, and there'll be much more peripherals available and stuff. And I'm glad I did it because kind of that is what's happened. And when I recently priced up to buy a Mac Pro as I would want it now, by the time I bought like a Magma chassis that I would want to put some hard drives in and to house UAD cards, it was going to cost me £8,000. So, you know, £8,000 for a machine that effectively gives me just a bit more power than what I've got now, and I haven't even used all the power in my machine. So eventually, I'm sure I'll have to, like everybody, I'll have to make the move. And everybody moans about having to move to Thunderbolt. It doesn't matter if you're going to go out and buy yourself an iMac or a laptop or whatever. Everybody's going to have to move to Thunderbolt eventually. So I think the whole point of, you know, people moaning that it's only got Thunderbolt is not just for the Mac Pro, it's across the whole range. So
yeah, that's a very good point. And because I was looking at this recently, I was thinking, well, maybe if you could buy a PCI card that had Thunderbolt, it would make so much sense, because then you could start to migrate your drives and all these other things to Thunderbolt in your Mac Pro. And then by the time you needed a new computer which only had Thunderbolt, you know, you'd at least have some of the peripherals going across. But I don't know if that's actually possible. I'm guessing it's not. Rich, these are the sort of things that must be kind of concerning you as well, because you get to a point where, you know, there's certain time, you know, are you going to jump, are you not? Because you've got a big, hard-working system, right, that has a lot of stuff hooked off it.
Well, yeah, we have a big system. And do I foresee ending up with one of these at some point? Absolutely. I'm not running out right now to do it. If somebody asked me to create a second system, either for myself or for somebody else to use, I would seriously consider which one of those options I would do and base it around the new computer.
Right.
If I could find software that ran on it, for example. There are scenarios under which I could see doing it in the near future, but I'm not running out to replace the working rig I have now with the, you know, the umbrella stand, the wastebasket, whatever you like to call it.
It has a number of monikers, yeah.
It is lovely, and I'm fascinated. I'd really love to try one.
Yeah,
it has to be wicked fast. I mean, as they say here in New England, wicked fast. It has to be really
super
impressive,
special,
yeah. I would think, given some of the things that are in it. So I'd like to try one, but it's not so much that I'm looking to replace my work environment with it right away.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? I think this, this is much more attractive to the video professional than perhaps it is to the audio professional at this point, and maybe there'll be a more audio centric or more, an easier path to upgrade if one has to in the future. I know, Gaz, you look like you wanted to come in there. You were leaning forward, and I thought, oh, here he goes. Oh, all right.
Well, it's an interesting product, isn't it? In that it is just redefined the image of a desktop. It's sort of I wonder if other companies will follow suit and make similar sort of or completely different, but inspired in the chassis, instead of it being this kind of oblong thing that could be into a beautiful object. So I'm quite interested to see what effect that will have, and how it'll probably be a few years. I think I remember being astonished that it took other manufacturers many years before they started copying the iMac design, the all in the screen kind of computer design. It took several years before I saw anything remotely like an iMac. So I wonder if this Mac Pro is going to be out there on its own for a while, just purely in a design aesthetic. But it's I was thinking about what a lovely system it'd be if you had one of those new Apollo desktop. What are they called? The Apollo
Twin, yeah.
An Apollo Twin, one of those, and an HD projector.
4K screen, yeah. I mean, that sort of level of information. No, I think you might be right. It's like one of those things that's more of a design, maybe more of a design thing to keep Apple as appearance at the top, because currently, like I say, their smartphones are not, the pinnacle where they have been for an awfully long time. So maybe it fulfills a purpose. Oh, Dave, I'm guessing you probably don't have a need for one. I mean, there is no. I mean, if you're not maxing out your current Mac, there's really no need, is there?
I got one. Oh no, that was a wine cooler. No, honestly, every operating system that Apple bring out usually involves us in at least one or two new computers, because we have to run everything kind of in parallel. So right at this moment in time, no. Although I do completely agree again with what Robbie said in terms of, once I've never looked at any of our Macs, certainly that I've had to use, and gone, actually that wasn't particularly good value for money, because over the long term they really do pay for themselves.
Yeah.
And generally we it's normally about $2,500. That's what we'll spend on each setup. And when you equate that to what that earns, you kind of go, actually that's pretty damn good value for money. And the fact that, up until recently you're not upgrading it every 30 seconds.
Yeah, I think
so. Yeah, there may come a time, but I think again you're right in terms of this is for the 4K lot. This is the video and film industry.
That's right. Okay.
Can I just say last thing about it? Sorry, was to me the best thing about it is the fact that it may be expensive at that high end, but it does show that Apple aren't deserting the pro market, which is to me the best thing about it.
Yeah,
is that I kind of feel confident that I know that when I want to buy a Mac, chances are there's going to be another high-end Mac that I'll be able to buy. I mean, that was the best thing about it for me, really.
Yeah, it shows the commitment to the actual product line, which is something that we were getting a bit worried about because we didn't see an upgrade for an awfully long time, did we? So, yeah, I think that's a very good point, Robbie. Perhaps there's time for our cellist story, because this was also interesting, because obviously if you want to buy one of these things, you're going to have to earn some cash. So I think I have a video to play. I've just got to go to the right page and... where is it? I think it's number 2. There we go. This is Zoe Keating. She's a cellist. Does a lot of stuff with looping. This is what she's performing here on Chase Jarvis Live, who I'm guessing is US kind of personality host kind of guy. This looks like a great setup. I'm jealous of the setup and having the actual cameramen. So she's usually able to live. And interestingly enough, I don't know if you get a shot in this. There'll be a shot of her with the Keith McMillan soft step where she's triggering loops, and that looks like it could be a 414 in the corner. Gear spotting. Nice bit of panning there. There's a guy filming it on his phone. Look. Anyway, I won't play it all. Zoe Keating, you know, she's been doing all right. She's been selling a number of albums and streams and what have you. And what was quite interesting, she tweeted not that long ago, she sent out a spreadsheet of like, this is what I earn from my music stuff. And I've got a screenshot of it here. There are actually 44 other people viewing it. I'm guessing she must have set it to read only. Otherwise, we could all change those figures and she'd look like a multi-millionairess or even a... But what's interesting is, you know, the majority of the income seems to basically come from iTunes, as far as I can tell. $38,000, and then when you get down to the streaming, it's where it just completely goes. So she's made physical sales, Bandcamp, Amazon, iTunes, $75,000, which I'm guessing isn't bad. I don't know how hard she has to work for that. I mean, that's I don't know what the average wage is in the US, but I'm guessing it's that's probably above average. And then about just over $6,000 for all the streams. And you know, we have spoken about this before, about what's the model that's going to work. She doesn't do many gigs and stuff, but it's an interesting, eye-opening thing. You know, we're all used to using the streams, but streams are just basically not in any way driving any kind of revenue, unless of course they're driving sales, and I don't know about that. I know, Robbie, I'm guessing, you know, you're working for record companies, you know, producing acts and producing singles and what have you. I mean, is there any change in the way that they're asking you to do things based on what the final delivery will be in terms of whether it's going to stream or MP3? I'm not talking technically, I'm talking maybe artistically.
No, not really. But I'm seeing a shift. Quite a lot of the people I've been working with recently are going with this whole model of wanting to just create really lovely product for their core audience, and you know, and putting all their efforts into that. So making premium product, you know, a special product for however many people that they've got as their core fan base, and making that product a premium product that those people really want to buy. And ironically, for some of those people, it works out way better in terms of what they earn than spreading it all through all these small little revenue streams. So, you know, I think, you know, there is a shift with some people to wanting to, you know, provide something for their fan base that is a nice thing that they can have again, which is nice to see.
So you're talking more about custom formatting rather than necessarily...
like an album with like a book about the making of it, or, you know, extra content that goes with that, and, you know, that kind of thing. Something that you would want to get at home, look at, and, you know, you'd feel like a bit like the old days of getting an album, I guess, but really making it centered around your core fan base. So, you know, those people buy into kind of helping your career sustain really and carry on. Yeah,
and I'm guessing, you know, consulting with them as to what they want a part of that process.
Yeah, exactly. And them feeling a part of it. You know, to me, that I like that whole idea, and I think that's kind of interesting that the like you said, the bulk of the money is coming from those sources other than like the streaming sources like Spotify and things.
Yeah, that's interesting. I know, Rich, I mean, you're in the studio making this kind of product. I mean, are you finding that you're having to deliver different formats because of this bespoke kind of slightly different thing, or is it still pretty much the 2-track master and that's all that's required, maybe a few different mixes?
Oh, lately the multitude of things I've been asked to provide is vast and seemingly endless at times, because whatever you think the stems should be doesn't turn out to be what the guy who's got to mix them thinks they should be, and it's like you start to wonder why you don't just send them the damn multi-track. But yes, the whole concept, the whole methodology, the whole workflow has changed. Now you mix it, but it's not your mix. Now you're going to send a bunch of stems off to somebody else who's going to create either a better record, a different record, the same record, some other, you know, I can't claim to fully understand this process.
Is there?
But sometimes I'm asked to mix things, and I'm happy to do it. How's that?
Yeah, no, that's cool. I guess the other thing is also, you know, are there other aspects to it, like, you know, stuff that you wouldn't get on the record, sort of little extras, you know, here's a bit of an outtake, you know, just so that there's more content to be sold, you know, to give it extra value, aside from just the formats of it.
I observe that to be true, yes.
Right.
I have nothing to do with its creation usually, but as I look at things that we've done pieces for, we're typically adding, I mean, for example, one example is they released a Chic box set a few years ago, and we had to add some songs to it, to the existing repertoire, things that the fans were interested in having that they had never heard before. And so that would have been sort of the value added portion of this compilation of essentially existing recordings.
Okay, so
as one example.
Right. So it's very much the onus is to kind of I mean, it's good that artists are also involved in the process of figuring out how to. I use the word exploit, like, you know, I don't mean it in a bad way, to exploit the creative spark that kind of generated the record in the first place. I know, Gaz, I mean, you're kind of, you know, you've just recently done a couple of tracks with your band, which are very, very basic recordings, but, you know, true to the essence of the creative spark. I mean, are you finding actually, well, maybe I could do a little extra thing where there's this, that, and the other to provide more, or, you know, how's that working for you?
Well, I've just been pondering over this idea that if you just listen to streamed music, whether you don't develop certain relationships with music that in the future you won't have like nostalgic feelings about, and just because it never exists in your life in a permanent way, because it's always this kind of thing that's this distant thing. It's a virtual thing, whether the memory of that music will always be a bit virtual as well, you know, that the ownership, the physical ownership of it, having it in your house, in your hands nearby, kind of keeps it like a present object in your mind. And you don't, like, I just wonder how much music just flows away in the history of time because of the lack of physical presence in your life, and whether that is, you know, whether that's a good or bad thing, I don't know, you know, but I think I was misty-eyed listening to Camels, The Snow Goose the other day. It's a real kind of prog album from the 70s, but I've been listening to it from, I don't know, late 80s, and I still listen to it and I love it. But, you know, we used to use the cover, we used to use the cover for numerous things I won't mention about, but we used to use the cover. We used to read through the track titles, and it was an instrumental album. We used to sort of like fantasize about the story of the album, you know, the music telling a story, but it was the physical. That music was interacting with us in a physical way through its cover, you know. So it was the music and the cover, and I have a real nostalgia for that and a love for that maybe is related to the physical, if this is making sense, you know.
I hear what you're saying.
And so just to say that, like, that maybe the streaming thing hasn't been providing people with a great value service in the end after all, because what it's in effect provided is just a transitory, momentary thing without, you know, and it's a lot gone down the river, you know.
I suppose so. You don't always remember what you were doing while you were sat in front of your computer listening to a track on a pair of tiny speakers for the first time, you know. But whereas if you were in your car or, you know, at a party or at a gig or something, then you've got something more to it. Where it's, yeah, I don't know. What do you think, Dave? I guess in some ways, what you have to do with delivering digital content in terms of software and instrument has to have parallels as well, you know, extra, you know, because you have to provide extra voices, or, you know, there's other things that presumably you could kind of put out with it. I don't know, not plectrums, but, you know, cardboard cutouts.
Well, actually, what's fascinating is you've just used the word that nobody is allowed to use here, and that word is content. This is not content. What we do and what musicians make is not just mere content. And that word drives me nuts. If we have a meeting with a company and they refer to any of our work as content, the meeting is over. It's done.
Oh dear,
and I find that really interesting, because that actually echoes a lot of what Gaz was saying, is that music has kind of become just content. Anything digital is just content. And it's not. It's far more than that, and it's far more than zeros and ones. It's the whole process that goes on behind it. And yet I'm beginning to struggle, because sometimes I'm not finding music as immersive as I used to find it. And I go through stages. Sometimes it'll be amazing. The other night, for example, I found what I think is the ultimate streaming, which is the radio. I discovered 6 radios, you know, BBC 6, which just played a whole evening of music that I would not have selected had I have gone to Spotify or any of those other delivery systems. And it was just brilliant, because of a 4-hour show, it was Rob the Bank on Friday night on Radio 6 Mix. in a 4-hour show, I heard our instruments on 3 tracks, which I immediately went to investigate and then purchased and whatnot. And I'll buy everything through iTunes or wherever I can, really.
Yeah.
But I kind of feel like I'm a bit of a old git. I know I am, really, but because we buy music. Chris buys music all the time. I buy music all the time. Even when people come and give us CDs or say, oh, I'll send you my CD, we go, oh, no, tell us where we can buy it. Because I love the idea that what we do and what musicians do is kind of all part of the same eco-structure, and that we sort of support each other. And I like spending my money on music, whereas I meet so many other people who go, it's just content.
Yeah.
If you spend money on music, though, you are in a sense investing into that music, aren't you?
Yeah.
You have something invested, so you want that music. You're buying that music into your life in a way, aren't you? And so I wonder again, without having that, you don't have the attachment to music in the same way, do you? If you haven't actually bought it, so when you stream it, it's like on the other side of the window,
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, and that's I suppose that's the like you're saying, the connection between the emotion that goes into creating music, because for some people it's an instinctive thing. Other people have to work at it really hard. There's all sorts of differing processes that go into it, and then for it to be consumed in such an offhand way does perhaps make it it does devalue the whole process somewhat, I guess. And I'm guessing, or Phil, no. Go,
No.
Rich.
You weren't doing it for them in the first place.
I suppose. But if you're into...
Or if you were, oh, let's put it this way. If you were, I don't think that's the best reason to want to do it.
Yeah, I guess that's true. Oops, I just pressed the wrong button. Anyway, that's enough of that. I don't agree. Good night. No. But I mean, to get a bit all hippie about it, does it not contribute to the overall good energy and feeling there is around, or can be around, music when half or a majority of where it actually ends up is essentially kind of glorified elevator music, which is something that people were kind of getting pretty annoyed about when elevator music was a derogatory term. But now music is so pervasive and so, content based, where it's just like, I just need to pump it out there because of that I don't know what it does for marketing or whatever. It just becomes less valuable emotionally, has commercial value in some ways, but but it's not tied with the emotion as well so much.
I'm with Dave on the whole, if I like an album, I'll go and buy the album from iTunes or whatever. Because, like you say, and like Gaz said, when you're paying for someone's music, you're putting something back in. And that's what I was saying about fans who like to buy something from an artist, and they're prepared to pay a premium for a special thing that's for them, because they are contributing to be able to keep that artist going and doing what they love doing and making the music that they want to hear. And it does. I don't think it's an old-fashioned concept to want to kind of promote art and music and film and all that, and by putting money back in from our own pockets by actually paying for stuff, we're doing that. And I meet so many people who in the music industry who don't do that, which amazes me, because I just think it's like having respect for somebody else's work and all the time they put in.
Yeah, I think that's a very valid point. And one that feels like quite a good point to perhaps end on. I know we didn't cover all the topics this week, but that's okay. It's good. It's free-flowing conversation. I'm glad we've had a good, wholesome audience with us this week. Actually, we've had a bumper chat room. I think it must be something to do with the fact that I discovered that during NAMM I'd had to switch off the podcasting live now because I was using that to trail our live blogs, and I switched it on today, and it seems to have done wonders for the live viewers numbers. So yeah, it's great to have you aboard. We do appreciate the chat room people, because they not only is their opinion very much help, it kind of adds an extra frisson to the whole event, and also when I'm struggling for facts, I'm often helped out by the chat room, so I'll just give them a bit of full screen love there. Thank you very much. I don't know what that's interesting. We're all on the. Oh yeah, that was the same. I was thinking, hold on a minute, didn't that happen half an hour ago? But I think it was the same line going past again. Just reiterated. Thank you, so that's Beef. So thank you everybody for joining us this week. Been great as ever. I'll say goodbye to you in reverse order. So I'm going to say to you, Robbie, thank you very much for joining us. And where you must tell me again, where do people find you?
Well, the Sushi Friday project. It's Sushi Friday Music on Facebook, and we've got our own fan page, if you were, with all the information and video blogs and stuff. So yeah, you can catch us there, or just Robbie Bronnimann on Twitter.
Sushi Friday Music, is that .com or is that on Facebook?
On Facebook.
Okay, yeah. Right. I must admit I had trouble finding it. You need to I'll put more links in the show notes. So when you look for Sushi Friday, there's all sorts of other Facebook groups that are actually eating sushi on a Friday.
Yeah.
I don't know whether or not
That's
you
why
do.
Hence the music on the end of it.
But anyway, you need to get an SEO expert in. I'm sure it'll work one. But I've enjoyed the stuff that I've seen so far. So thank you very much, Robbie. It's been a pleasure having you on, and your lighting has kept me animated. It's changing beautifully.
I'm going to have lasers next time.
Are you? Awesome.
No, but
that's not a bad idea.
Yeah.
And also, thank you very much, Rich Hilton. There, ready to jump into a sort of running snow plough to get him to work.
Right, dog sled. From the looks of it.
Is it
I'm
really?
gonna have to hitch up the dogs.
Wow, it's really that.
I may have to make a phone call about that. It's like almost whiteout blizzard out there right now.
Oh wow.
Yeah, it's really coming down.
Real-time weather reports as well on Sonic Talk, folks. So if you're in the eastern seaboard area, there's snow. That's all I can tell you.
Work on your phone.
Thank you very much, Rich. Pleasure to have you as ever. Thanks for coming on.
Always fun. Thank you, guys.
We'll also go there to Dave Spiers, GeForceSoftware.com. Also, in fact, you've got one of those little Philips lights up there above the... but it's not on at the moment. It's the LED donut. You haven't got a remote control for it?
Yeah. No, I can't remember what it's called. I've had it for yonks.
Yeah, they're great,
Anyway.
aren't they? Jolly good.
Living colours.
Living colours.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just kind of changes.
Yeah, isn't that the famous drum break from the remix? Living Colour. What was that? Love Riz It's Ugly Head Again.
Cool, blimey. Nick.
That is break spotting for you. And Vernon Reid actually does listen to the show. I can't believe it. I mean, he used to anyway. I don't know if he does anymore, but he did, because I remember I've told this story loads of times. I'm going to tell it again. Nam, several years ago, I was walking along. There was this sort of celeb type entourage coming towards me, and out of it appears this hand, grabs me and says, "Yeah, you're Nick Bat." Shake by the hand. I'm, "Look, man, your podcast is great." And it was Vernon Reid. And I just went absolutely bright red and sort of went blah blah blah. But anyway, if he is still listening, that's a treasured memory, Vernon. Anyway, and so back, Gaz Williams. GazWilliams.me, bass player who looks like he's about to play some kind of bass solo. I feel like I should... Dave, you need to be now hitting the ride cymbal with the tips of your cymbal so we can have a little... ding, 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 ding.
The trumpet.
I've got an Electron analog keys here, which I probably could play out of.
Have you got that? How long have you got that there for, Nick?
Until I finish the review. So
I'm going to come over. I want to go.
you want to go?
I've got the gas big for it at the moment.
Have you? Well, it does sound absolutely lovely. It's got some very interesting ideas. It's got as well as LFOs, it's got like 3 or 4 other modulation separate things for vibrato, and there's lots and lots of LFOs in it, which makes it some very, and each oscillator's got, or each voice has got dual filters, and there's some very, very nice stuff going on there. I don't have a camera set up on it at the moment.
There's that mode, isn't there? Is it called the multi-mode? I've only just found out about it. There's a wonderful video by Cuckoo, someone I think's great. He does these great videos, where he's playing the multi-mode in the analog keys. And basically what that is that you've got a totally different patch on every key.
Yeah,
so
I'm just looking at that actually now. Well, you get drum voices. It's not playing because I think it's got a... I must have it. I've edited it and inadvertently. So you get like 6 or 7 drum voices, and then something else. I have to say though, much as I love it, it is infuriatingly difficult to find your way around, and I'm finding that I'm kind of going. I like the synth, but I just want to set the polyphony for the track, right? Where do I do that? I have to go into kit.
Right.
It's just and it smacks a little bit. I mean, because the operating system was initially brought out for the machine drum, which was a fantastically groundbreaking drum machine, but it doesn't seem to have moved out of that very far. It just seems to have adapted. It's got that slight sort of kind of needs to have a major software iteration into the operating system, but they haven't done it this time. So it makes everything is kind of bolted. Oh yeah, you get to that by going to this one and then through here. It's just a little bit like frustrating when you're just going, I just want to do this. And it's like, okay, well now I know how to do it. I mean, once you start learning, it does feel quite intuitive, but that learning curve is like this. It's like a flipping, vertical. Yes, I won't.
Wow.
Yeah, but it's but when you're there,
I did warn you of this.
I knew it was. I knew that this was the case.
Yeah,
but I
we
think,
did.
But
you
I
could
think,
see it.
But I think the thing is, last time I used Electron stuff, it was just as a drum machine, so it wasn't actually all of the other stuff that there's going on in it as well, which is kind of complicated. But there will be a review forthcoming, and I have to say, I know Mark because Mark had it for a little while as well, and it really does smell of new synthesizer. This whole room, which is a big room, even though it's been out of the box for ages, still smells very strongly of sort of that new. I don't know what they do. I mean, maybe they've got some special kind of scratch and sniff technology in there or something. But it really is a very smelly synthesizer, I have to say.
Tweak and sniff.
Sorry,
Sorry.
Tweak and sniff.
Tweak and sniff. Yeah, that's a much better idea.
Just a quick question, Nick. Is it aftertouch on the keyboard?
Yeah.
And what is the keybed like? Is it decent?
It's good. It's got a really bizarre. I'll see if I can move this. Hold on, you just have to give me a bit of. I might be able to get it into. Oh, I might have to turn it off. Here we go. Clap. It's got a really strange construction. Because you look at that, and then you look underneath. What they've done is they've left.
Oh.
All of that stuff off the bottom.
So, don't like that.
So getting
Snappable.
out of the box. I was like, oh, hold on, I think I might break one of these keys. It's a really peculiar design decision because really, I would say I want that bit filled so that there's only sort of this much sticking out, or that. So it's a really curious design decision, I guess, because the keys here, that's where the the waterfally bit is, so that's where you can't get under them. But yeah, it's a very unusual concept, and that's
designed to get knackered live.
Well,
which instrument is that?
That's the analog keys.
I thought they were white. That's funny. They make them in different colors.
No, there's an analog keys. The thing that you might have seen at NAMM was the rhythm.
No, I saw them both.
Oh, okay, right, gotcha.
And maybe I'm just misremembering it then.
No, I think
one is on its way here actually. So
it sounds absolutely lovely. I have to say, it really does. But it's just you're going to have to. It's as I was saying to Mark. This is getting a bit off topic, but I was saying to Mark, you, both him and I occasionally refer people to instruments. Say, I'm looking for something, and I said, well, would you actually give this to any one of your clients as a sound source? And he just said, I couldn't because they wouldn't be able to use it straight away. And both me and him have probably combined 50 years experience in using music technology, and we were struggling. So that's the thing. You just have to work the way that they have made it, and that's quite challenging for somebody who maybe just wants the sound of the Electron. Do you see what I mean? They're not going to get the most out of it without having to learn a whole load of stuff, and that's the thing that's kind of making it difficult to see how it's where it sits.
Is there any real-time software support? Is there like an editor that works in real time on your computer for the thing, so you don't have to look through that tiny little postage stamp at it?
No, I don't think there is. One thing I will say though is the script when you hit like amplitude or oscillator or whatever, it's you're very quick to get to those kind of sound making things. It's the deeper and more unusual aspects that are complicated to get to. So
someone will make a touch OSC for it or something, won't they?
Maybe so. I don't know. I haven't got as deep to find out whether or not it actually, everything has its own parameter, as it were. I don't know yet. I haven't got into that, but that's presumably will be the case, I guess. But I don't know. Anyway, that is kind of yes. That's the the Electron analog keys interlude, which will be coming soon. But in the meantime, we'll say goodbye and thank you ever so much, everybody, for joining us. And I can now press the fade to back button. I feel like when I press this, I'm like the person who did the Gus Honeybun routine in the UK. And we're now going to turn the lights off for somebody's special birthday. And here it comes. And actually, this one could go for Rich. It's Rich Beach, our guitars editor. It was his birthday yesterday. 25. Can you believe that? Here it goes. See you later.